A good old-fashioned Christmas. Sooner or later, at every Christmas party, just as things are beginning to get good, someone shuts his eyes, puts his head back, and moans softly, "Ah, well, this isn't like the old days. We don't seem to have any good old-fashioned Christmases anymore." To which the answer from my corner of the room is, "All right, that suits me." Just what they have in mind when they say old-fashioned Christmas, you never can pin them down to telling. Lots of snow, they mutter, and lots of food. Yet, if you work it right, you can still get plenty of snow and food today. Snow at any rate. Then there seems to be some idea of the old-fashioned Christmas being of necessity in the country. It doesn't make any difference whether you were raised on a farm or whether your ideas of a rural Christmas were gleaned from pictures in old copies of Harper's Young People. You must give folks to understand that such were the surroundings in which you spent your childhood holidays, and that, ah me, those days will never come again. Well, supposing you get your wish sometime. Supposing, let us say, your wife's folks who live up in East Russet, Vermont, write and ask you to come up and bring the children for a good old-fashioned Christmas. While we're all still together, they add cheerily, with their flair for putting everybody in good humor. Hooray, hooray, off to the country for Christmas. Pack up all the warm clothes in the house, for you will need them up there where the air's clean and cold. Snowshoes? Yes, put them in. Or better yet, Daddy will carry them. What fun! Take along some sleigh bells to jangle in case there aren't enough on the pung. There must be jangling sleigh bells, and whiskey for frostbite. Or is it snakebite that whiskey is for? Anyway, put it in. We're off. Goodbye, all. Goodbye. Jangle, jangle, jangle. Jangle, jangle, jangle. Jangle, jangle, jangle. Jangle, jangle. Jangle. In order to get to East Russet, you take the Vermont Central as far as Twitchell's Falls and change there for Torpid River Junction, where a spur line takes you right into Gormley. At Gormley, you're met by a buckboard, which takes you back to Torpid River Junction again. By this time, a train or something has come in which will wait for the local from Beesus. While waiting for this, you will have time to send your little boy to school so that he can finish the 3rd grade. At East Russet, Grandpa meets you with the sleigh. The bags are piled in, and Mother sits in front with Lester in her lap, while Daddy takes Junior and Gaga in back with him in the luggage. Get app, Esther girl. Esther girl get apps, and 2 suitcases fall out. Hi-ho! Out we get and pick them up, brushing the snow off and filling our cuffs with it as we do so. After all, there's nothing like snow for getting up one's cuffs. Good clean snow never hurt anyone, which is lucky because after you have gone a mile or so, you discover that Gaga is missing. Never mind, she's a self-reliant little girl and will doubtless find her way to the farm by herself. Probably she will be there waiting for you when you arrive. The farm is situated on a hill about 1,100 miles from the center of town, just before you get into Canada. If there is a breeze in winter, they get it. But what do they care for breezes, so long as they have the little Colonel oil heater in the front room to make everything cozy and warm within a radius of 4 inches? And the big open fireplace, with the draft coming down it. Fun for everybody. You are just driving up to the farmhouse in the sleigh with the entire right leg frozen where the lap robe has slipped out. Grandma is waiting for you at the door, and you bustle in, all glowing with good cheer. "Merry Christmas, Grandma!" Lester is cross, and Junior is asleep and has to be dragged by the hand upstairs, bumping against each step all the way. It is so late that you decide that you all might as well go to bed, especially as you learn that breakfast is at 4:30. It usually is at 4, but Christmas being a holiday, everyone sleeps late. As you reach the top of the stairs, you get into a current of cold air, which has something of the quality of the temperature in a nice, well-regulated crypt. This is the bedroom zone, and in it the thermometer never tops the 0 mark from October 15th until the middle of May. Those rooms in which no one sleeps are used to store perishable vegetables in, and someone has to keep thumbing the tomatoes and pears every so often to prevent their getting so hard that they crack. The way to get undressed for bed in one of Grandpa's bedrooms is as follows. Starting from the foot of the stairs, where it is warm, Run up two at a time to keep the circulation going as long as possible. Opening the bedroom door with one hand, tear down the curtains from the windows with the other. Pick up the rugs from the floor and snatch the spread from the top of the bureau. Pile all these on the bed, cover with the closet door which you have wrenched from its hinges, and leap quickly underneath. It sometimes helps to put on a pair of rubbers over your shoes. And even when you are in bed, you have no guarantee of going to sleep. Grandpa's mattresses seem to contain the overflow from the silo, corn husks, baked potato skins, and long, stringy affairs which feel like pipe cleaners. On a cold night, snuggling down into these is about like snuggling down into a bed of damp pine cones out in the forest. Then there are things abroad in the house. Shortly after you get into bed, the stairs start snapping. Next, something runs along the roof over your head. You say to yourself, "Don't be silly, it's only Santa Claus." Then it runs along in the wall behind the head of the bed. Santa Claus wouldn't do that. Down the long hall which leads into the L of the house, you can hear the wind sighing softly, with an occasional reassuring bang of a door. The unmistakable sound of someone dying in great pain rises from just below the windowsill. It is a sort of low moan with just a touch of strangulation in it. Perhaps Santa has fallen off the roof. Perhaps that story you once heard about Grandpa's house having been a hangout for revolutionary smugglers is true, and one of the smugglers has come back for his umbrella. The only place at a time like this is down under the bedclothes. But the children become frightened and demand to be taken home, and Grandpa has to be called to explain that it is only Bluebell out in the barn. Bluebell has asthma, and on a cold night they have to be very patient with her. Christmas morning dawns cloudy and cold with the threat of plenty more snow, and after all, what would Christmas be without snow? You lie in bed for 1 hour and a quarter trying to figure out how you can get up without losing the covers from around you. A glance at the water pitcher shows that it is time for them to put the red ball up for skating. You think of the nice, warm bathroom at home and decide that you can wait until you get back there before shaving. This breaking the ice in the pitcher seems to be a feature of the early lives of all great men, which they look back on with tremendous satisfaction. When I was a boy, I used to have to break the ice in the pitcher every morning before I could wash, is said with as much pride as one might say, "When I was a boy, I stood at the head of my class." Just what virtue there is in having to break ice in a pitcher is not evident, unless it lies in their taking the bother to break the ice and wash it all. Any time that I have to break ice in a pitcher as a preliminary to washing, I go unwashed, that's all. And Benjamin Franklin and U.S. Grant and Rutherford B. Hayes can laugh as much as they like. I'm nobody's fool about a thing like that. Getting the children dressed is a lot of fun when you have to keep pumping their limbs up and down to keep them from freezing out stiff. The children love it and are just as bright and merry as little pixies when it is time to go downstairs and say good morning to Grandpa and Grandma. The entire family enters the dining room purple and chattering and exceedingly cross. After breakfast, everyone begins getting dinner. The kitchen, being the only warm place in the house, may have something to do with it. But before long, there are so many potato peelings and turkey feathers and squash seeds and floating bits of pie crust in the kitchen that the women folks send you and the children off into the front part of the house to amuse yourselves and get out of the way. Then what a jolly time you and the kiddies and Grandpa have together. You can either slide on the horsehair sofa or play the Wayside Chapel on the piano. The piano has scroll work on either side of the music rack with yellow silk showing through. Or look out the window and see 10 miles of dark gray snow. Perhaps you may even go out to the barn and look at the horses and cows. But really, as you walk down between the stalls, when you have seen one horse or one cow, you've seen them all. And besides, the cold in the barn has an added flavor of damp harness leather and musty carriage upholstery which eats into your very marrow. Of course, there are the presents to be distributed, but that takes on much the same aspect as the same ceremony in the new-fashioned Christmas, except that in the really old-fashioned Christmas, the presents weren't so tricky. Children got mostly mittens and shoes, with a sled thrown in sometimes for dissipation. Where a boy today is bored by 3 o'clock in the afternoon with his electric grain elevator and miniature pond with real perch in it, The old-fashioned boy was lucky if he got a copy of Naval Battles of the War of 1812 and an orange. Now, this feature is often brought up in praise of the old way of doing things. I tell you, says Uncle Jip, the children in my time never got such presents as you get today. And he seems proud of the fact, as if there was some virtue accruing to him for it. If the children of today can get electric grain elevators and tin automobiles for Christmas, why aren't they that much better off than their grandfathers who got only wristlets? Learning the value of money, which seems to be the only argument of the Stan-Patters, doesn't hold very much water as a Christmas slogan. The value of money can be learned in just about 5 minutes when the time comes, but Christmas is not the season. But to return to the farm, while you and the kiddies and Gramp are killing time, you can either bring in wood from the woodshed, or thaw out the pump, or read the books in the bookcase over the writing desk. Of the three, bringing in the wood will probably be the most fun, as you are likely to burn yourself thawing out the pump, and the list of reading matter on hand includes the life and deeds of General Grant, our first century, Andy's trip to Portland, bound volumes of the Jersey Cattle Breeders' Gazette, and Diseases of the Horse. Then there are some old copies of Round the Lamp for the years 1850 to 54, and some colored plates showing plans for the approaching World's Fair at Chicago. Thus the time passes in one round of gaiety after another until you are summoned to dinner. Here all cavilling must cease. The dinner lives up to the advertising. If an old-fashioned Christmas could consist entirely of dinner without the old-fashioned bedrooms, the old-fashioned pitcher, and the old-fashioned entertainments, we professional pessimists wouldn't have a turkey leg left to stand on. But, as has been pointed out, it is possible to get a good dinner without going up to East Russet, Vermont, or if it isn't, then our civilization has been a failure. And the dinner only makes the aftermath seem worse. According to an old custom of the human race, everyone overeats. Deliberately and with considerable gusto, you sit at the table and say pleasantly, "My, but I won't be able to walk after this. Just a little more of the dark meat, please, Grandpa, and just a dab of stuffing. Oh, dear, that's too much." You haven't the excuse of the drunkard who becomes oblivious to his excesses after several drinks. You know what you are doing, and yet you make light of it and even laugh about it as long as you can laugh without splitting out a seam. And then you sit and moan. If you were having a good new-fashioned Christmas, you could go out to the movies or take a walk or a ride, but to be really old-fashioned, you must stick close to the house, for in the old days there were no movies and no automobiles, and if you wanted to take a walk, you had to have the hired man go ahead of you with a snow shovel and make a tunnel. There are probably plenty of things to do in the country today, and just as many automobiles and electric lights as there are in the city, but you can't call Christmas, with all these improvements, an old-fashioned Christmas. That's cheating. If you are going through the thing right, you have got to retire to the sitting room after dinner and sit. Of course, you can go out and play in the snow if you want to, but you know as well as I do that this playing in the snow is all right when you are small, but a bit trying on anyone over 30. And anyway, it always began to snow along about 3 in the afternoon, an old-fashioned Christmas day, with a cheery old leaden sky overhead and a jolly old gale sweeping around the corners of the house. No, you simply must sit indoors in front of a fire, if you insist, but nevertheless with nothing much to do. The children are sleeping and snarling. Grandpa is just sleepy. Someone tries to start the conversation, but everyone else is too gorged with food to be able to move the lower jaw sufficiently to articulate. It develops that the family is in possession of the loudest ticking clock in the world, and along about 4 o'clock it begins to break its own record. A stenographic report of the proceedings would read as follows. "Oh, I'm sleepy. I shouldn't have eaten so much. Tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. Seems just like Sunday, doesn't it? Look at Grandpa, he's asleep. Here, Junior, don't plague Grandpa, let him sleep. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Junior, let Grandpa alone. Do you want Mama to take you upstairs? Oh, tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Louder and louder the clock ticks until something snaps in your brain, and you give a sudden leap into the air with a scream, finally descending to strangle each of the family in turn and Grandpa as he sleeps. Then, as you feel your end is near, all the warm things you have ever known come back to you in a flash. You remember the hot Sunday subway to Coney, your trip to Mexico, the bullfighters of Spain. You dash out into the snowdrifts and plunge along until you sink exhausted. Only the fact that this article ends here keeps you from freezing to death with an obituary the next day reading, "Died suddenly at East Russet, Vermont, of an old-fashioned Christmas."